Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I wanted to share my October wrap up today. First thing I apologise for, I put the wash on. That was a rookie error, so apologies for the sound in the background. I will speak up a little bit so hopefully you can hear me, and I do caption my videos. So if it's easier to have some captions on to make sure you can hear me, please do. I would turn it off, but it literally doesn't let you turn it off mid-cycle. It like locks it for about 3 hours. We live, we move. The other thing is, I have a huge pile just down here, like, let's see if I can show you, of all of my fiction books, and that is because I am painting the backs of the bookshelves next door. So I can't pull out every book I've read, but I have pulled out my hardback fiction for you so that I can show you that, but if it's paperback, I can't dig through those piles, it's too much. So after a very non-fiction heavy few months, October is a fiction, definitely fiction heavy. Actually, let's talk through the ones I can't show to you first. So the only one I read that was non-fiction, I think, was A Bigger Picture, My Fight to Bring a New African Voice to the Climate Crisis by Vanessa Nakati. Obviously very topical, with Glasgow going on at the minute. And I'd actually only heard of Vanessa through the sort of viral thing that went around on Twitter, where she was cropped out of a photo of lots of white climate activists. So they showed all the white people and the wash is done, and they cropped her out the picture. So she is talking about her place in climate activism, the particular problems that climate change brings to people living in Africa, how it differs from the global south to the global north. I did like it. I didn't feel like I got that much. It was a little bit like, I felt as though it was maybe aged down, like it was directed at people in maybe their late teens, early 20s, which might have been kind of the point of it, I don't know, but it kind of felt like it was directed towards either like final stage of secondary school or university students. So I did like it. I just kind of felt like it wasn't quite landing where I wanted it to be, but I've read quite a lot of climate change fiction by white authors, so it was really nice to have the sort of voice of a black author in there too. And then I read 2 more Sarah Moss books. So I read Bodies of Light first, and then Signs for Lost Children. They come as a duology, like they're like companion novels, I think is how they're explained. And the first of the 2 novels follows a woman who is living in a house with her father, who paints these paintings and is very like insular. Her mother's very controlling, and she's sort of growing up in this environment and trying to train to become one of the first generations of female doctors. That one I didn't love as much as I actually loved the second book, Signs for Lost Children. I much preferred Signs for Lost Children, and the end really frustrated me, but I enjoyed both an awful lot. I think it means I've got one more Sarah Moss book that's fiction that I haven't read yet that is out, so that's really exciting. So I'm working my way through her, but I have really enjoyed both of those books in October. And then the next one I read, it's a shame I can't hold it up because it is proof to show you the cover, but it's Hair House, and that's by Sally Hinchcliffe. I was sent this one for review. This is coming out in January 2022, so a little bit of a wait, but it's not too long now. And this is contemporary, creepy, gothic, countryside, rural, folk horror stuff. We follow a woman who has moved to a remote village and sort of a little bit on a whim, moved into this cottage, and she begins to sort of build relationships with the very close-knit people that live in this location. The sort of Hare House, the name of the novel, refers to the large manor house, which has stuffed hares in odd, like, little situations around the house. It's very odd. I did enjoy it. I would definitely recommend it if you're into that particularly like creepy sense. It's not like a thriller would be what I would say. It is more of a general creepy, not quite horror-y type book. It's one of those ones I think would be good for like a long winter evening. Then on to the ones I can actually show you. I read and loved Bewilderment by Richard Powers. I'm so glad because if I hadn't enjoyed this one, I would have given up on him. But oh my goodness, I love this book. I know it's been on the booker list, so probably lots of people know what it's about, but just as a brief summary, we follow a father who is an astrobiologist, meaning that he helps to look across the universe for signs of extraterrestrial life. Not in the sense that he goes off in a rocket ship, but in terms of like looking at light spectra that come from planets, or determining composition and what that might look like. It's a lot of kind of theoretical physics as opposed to he's a sci-fi spaceman. And his son is definitely having some problems. I read this as his son is autistic, but I don't think you necessarily have to read it that way. He struggles in lots of different scenarios, but really struggles with the concept of the way in which humans treat the environment and nature and animals and living things. And that's echoed in the way his mother was. His mother was an activist, and he finds himself, the little boy, in this place where the emotions that he's feeling and the kind of paralysis he's feeling end up with him sort of violently acting out at school against another student. That's kind of the setup of the book, but I would say one of the main like themes is like sort of grief, but also connection, but definitely running through it this disbelief of what we're doing to the environment, and it was particularly affecting through the eyes of this child. I could hear quite strongly in this sort of the author challenging us through the voice of this little boy. I really like this one, and I'm really glad I picked it up. I think if there's other Richard Powers that is like more focused on the nature, that's maybe more for me, because I read Glacier 2.2, yeah, which was more of the sci-fi side of it, and I didn't like it at all. I found the characters, I couldn't connect with them at all, but the nature writing and environmentalism is definitely something that I'll keep an eye on Richard Powers' book. Then next I read 3 Rooms by Hamiah. I really like this one too. It's a very different type of book, very slow, very character driven, almost a set of 3 vignettes really into this individual's life as they reside in 3 separate rooms in Oxford, London, and then back to their parents' house. It's looking at kind of the precarious nature of what it is that we do. It's a very millennial novel, sort of the threats of renting, the not belonging, the jobs market, Brexit. And I thought it was really beautifully written, and it didn't feel too pretentious. To say it was kind of dealing with those things, it didn't feel too on the nose or like it was shoving it down your throat. So it was very like descriptive of other things that then you knew what the reasons for them were, if that makes sense. So like as an example, it shows her trying to get her deposit back and why that matters so much, and those like little details that I'm a homeowner now, I'm very lucky, but that I remember from renting, and the terror in that. So I really enjoyed this one too. I know this one's doing the rounds a little bit on BookTube at the minute. Then I finally read Beautiful World, Where Are You? I did like this one too. I read it almost like in one big go. And I found that I kind of raced a little bit toward the end. I've liked every Sally Rooney I've read. I don't think I'm one of those people that has a normal people conversations with friends, like love, hate, whatever, between the 2 books. I did think that this one fell more closely towards Conversations with Friends, in terms of looking at the adult relationships between a number of different people. And I know lots of people have spoken about this before, but I particularly liked how she was sort of self-referential in the element of this main character. One of the main characters is this author who's written 2 novels and people won't leave her alone. And I found that quite funny because of the fact that Sally Rooney has said in her interviews that she separates herself from her fiction. So it just made me laugh. It almost felt like a little bit of teasing towards the literary community, but I did like it. I won't say more, only because everyone else has. And then the next adult fiction that I read was The Turnout. I hadn't read any Megan Abbott before, but the girls on What Page You On seem to be completely obsessed with her. Every time a new book comes out, they're like, get it, go get it, go get it. I quite liked it. I didn't adore it. But I did really like the setting, and I can understand the appeal. I'm just not quite sure I loved it. I don't know why I didn't love it, but the plot essentially follows two sisters, very close relationship, and the husband of one of the two sisters, who we learn has lived with the girls since they were very young. It's a very sort of incestuous, close knit world of this elite ballet school. So the two sisters are the teachers for this school, and we follow the story through this particularly kind of frenetic period of time of bringing together the Nutcracker, and there's a nice sort of juxtaposition between the beauty of the ballet and the kind of pain and discipline and cruelty behind the world of ballet as we go through the story itself. The story is almost kind of domestic horror of what we bring into our lives, what we bring into our houses, how close other people get to us, the sense of having somebody that you can't get rid of. But I just didn't adore it. I don't know what it didn't do, but it missed something for me. But it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. But I don't know. I have a bit of a think about whether or not she's someone I'll pick up again. I don't know why. If anyone else feels similarly about this one, do tell me. Like, all her books kind of quite similar? Is that one that people do people love the Turnout? Do people think it's not quite as good as some others? Let me know what you think. And then the last book I read in October was Jen Campbell's The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers, and I really enjoyed this. It's a collection of stories from all across the world that are, if not like outright scary as an adult, definitely creepy. Jen has worked in sort of queerness and positive representation of disability in these books. She's sort of got this underline of sort of modernity within these stories, which are a lot of them are really quite old. So they are reimaginings, but I don't know how, some of them I'm familiar with, some of them I'm less familiar with. I don't know how sort of far from the original some of them are. That my favourite story of all of them, let me find this name of it. It was the Merman one. Hang on. Yes, it's called The Souls Trapped Under the Ocean. I also love the illustration in that particular story. The illustrations are lovely. There you go. I don't have any children that are like middle grade age in my life at the minute. My uncle has millions of children, so I suppose some of them might be. There's a little bit of a gap between the older ones and the younger ones, but I can definitely see the appeal of this. I think that if I was a child, I would have enjoyed this a lot at the time, and I think it's a really fun way to look at these particular fairy stories across the world, but without necessarily having to hold to the ways in which they're written. And the tale, the morality tale of that can change over time. So I really enjoyed this one too, so thank you for that copy to review too. So for me, it's been a really light reading month in October. I don't really know why. Work's quite busy. But I have enjoyed a lot of what I've read. I've read a lot of fiction, partly because it's November, so that means it's non-fiction November. And I've read so much non-fiction over the past sort of 4 or 5 months. I wanted a little break into fiction to refresh myself, because I'd kind of forgotten about non-fiction November before then. But yes, anyway, I think I've been nattering for about half an hour, so I'm going to say goodbye. Hope you guys are all doing well and look after yourselves until I see you again. Bye!